Coming up this morning on a packed episode of Inside Man United, the headlines. Breakthrough Man United star still getting changed with under-21s and could leave in summer after a contract row. Ratcliffe gunning to sign supreme €100 million rated Benfica centre-back. Arsenal more likely than United to sign £70 million Prem star. And Manchester United given key double injury boost for Nottingham Forest game. Mason Greenwood very upset by Jude Bellingham but does not want the superstar to be punished with a ban. And United want Zinedine Zidane to become their next manager as Ratcliffe dreams of appointing the Frenchman to become Erik ten Hag's successor. And finally, Erik ten Hag hits back at Jamie Carragher's analysis of Manchester United on Monday Night Football. All that coming up. A very good morning to you. Happy Tuesday, February 28th, end of the month. And of course, United playing tonight against Forest in an away game, a must-win game after the Fulham debacle, I think we can all agree. And what was turning out to be a very strong and good month went out with a little bit of a whimper, but maybe we can kind of regain some pride and put in a performance against Forest. But you know, it's going to take a huge improvement on what we saw against Fulham. But we have an absolutely packed episode today. There's a lot of different bits of news to get through. So let's get into it. So we start off with the Irish Sun, but this is across a couple of different publications. But United star still getting changed with under-21s. Of course, they're talking about Omari Forson. Many believe that this is the reason why Pelistri's gone out on loan, similar to Garner going out on loan because we had Mainu. Pelistri's gone out on loan because we have Forson. And this could be a bit of a storm in a teacup, but they're saying that Omari Forson could leave the club in June when his contract expires. They're looking for him to extend. Now, there is rumours that one of the key reasons why Omari Forson was given some game time is that they want to keep him. They thought it was maybe a little bit early to give him game time, but they know there's a risk he could leave, so they want to kind of give him assurances that there is a first team plan for him. So yeah, he's among United's most highly rated academy graduates, and that he certainly is. Didn't have a great game against Fulham, wasn't the worst, but it was just a very bad kind of a game for a young lad like that to make his debut because everyone was so abominably shit in that game, and it's bad. And of course, he got whipped to make room for McTominay, I believe, or it could have been Anthony. I'm not too sure. So, yeah, he doesn't have a place in the senior dressing room just yet, but that's pretty much par for the course. A lot of young lads, they don't just immediately get into the dressing room. Kobbie Mainoo didn't get into the first team dressing room until last month. So they want to, still give an element of humility to these guys that, yeah, you're a young lad. We want to come up to, they should be happy enough to be involved with the first team without demanding their own locker. And that's correct, especially if, you're 18, 19. He's still a very young man. So the Red Devils manager, Ten Hag, opted against fielding Anthony, who we know, who he pushed to sign 2 years ago. According to The Athletic, however, there are some significant doubts about Forson's future at Old Trafford as he has yet to agree on a new contract. Despite training with the first team since the summer, the youngster doesn't have a place in the senior dressing room and still gets changed with the under-21s. Again, nothing too out of the ordinary there. Partly due to the lack of space, but also the club's culture that demands young players pay their dues, with Kobbie Mainoo only getting his first team dressing room a month ago. So yeah, they do have a lot of faith in Forson and hope that he will extend his contract. I mean, listen, when you've got Mainu doing what he's doing, Garnacho, I mean, Forson has to be encouraged to see that there is room for young lads. Kim Wallace coming through as well, the centre half. And he'll be given his chances. It's very simple. Either that or he gets sent out. But there's a real chance at this kid. I mean, they want to keep him. They want to play him. There's no way United want to sell him. But yeah, they're worried that some good game time is going to raise attention across the league, both foreign and domestic, to his abilities, and that if he is running down the clock on his contract, teams they're putting him in the shop window essentially. And drumming up a lot of interest, which is great for Forson and his agent and for the negotiating on that contract. So it's not even the fact that will he sign, but is he going to try and bend us over? It's not that he mightn't want to stay, but he might get twice what he would have been offered as a result of having multiple teams coming in for his signature. So I'm confident Omari Forson isn't going to be going anywhere. I think United are going to want to keep him. I think under Ineos, and the profile of player and the type of club that they want to run, I think he fits right into that, and I think they're going to do everything to make him stay. So I'm pretty confident on that one. Ratcliffe gunning to sign supreme 100 million rated man. This is Antonio Silva, the very highly rated centre back. I think he's got around 9 caps for Portugal at the moment, playing in the centre of Benfica's defence. Of course, United also being linked with João Neves, the young diminutive midfielder who seems to be the main target, but he's kind of their golden egg. Apparently, they'd be a little bit more willing to sell Antonio Silva and make a pretty penny on him. So they've reportedly initiated contact with top agency Gestifute over a deal to sign Antonio Silva, and it's claimed Benfica are indeed willing to discuss a deal. For Jim Ratcliffe needing to make major improvements in the centre half position. I said on yesterday's episode that Milan were going after Lindelof. It's quite clear that Varane is probably going to be sold. Maguire's going to be sold. Martinez still has those injury worries. Kimwala might be brought in, but I wouldn't be surprised to see 2 or 3 defenders brought in some capacity. Maybe some that can play both as a fullback and a centre half. That's why we wanted Benjamin Pavard. How handy would have he been had United pulled their finger out? Apparently he wanted to move to United. I was absolutely raging we didn't get Pavard, and seems to be doing well. I think he went to Inter in the end, and seems to be doing pretty well there. So United failed to find a consistent rhythm so far, with the promise shown last season under Erik ten Hag stalling badly in the wake of a hugely frustrating campaign. So yeah, it looks like ten Hag wants to get this guy at 100 million or 50 million. 50 million might be a go. So it remains to be seen. And with Dan Ashworth set to take up a role as sporting director once compensation with Newcastle is agreed, the club is already working on a list of potential summer signings. Antonio Silva contact with Benfica willing to sell. So per reports, Ratcliffe and Ashworth want to strengthen United's spine. That's no surprise. According to Oyogo, which is kind of the premier football publication within Portugal, contact has been established with the agency. They write that United have already watched the Benfica Star on a number of occasions. That is correct. But they've also been there to look at João Neves as well. So he is protected by €100 million transfer clause. So it's going to take a lot of money. He's not going to go for 100 million. It's going to be a hell of a lot less. So United are also on the trail of Benfica teammate João Neves, which we well know. But they'd rather sell Silva than Neves. They might sell both. Who knows? Who knows who they got waiting in the wings? But if United offered 150 million for the pair of them, it's hard to say no to that. That is music to United's ears, who will now attempt to establish contact with Benfica in the coming weeks and months to find out exactly how much they would want for the player. They're saying around 50 million. He's already played 81 games, so he's a very kind of experienced man for such tender years. And of course, Jared Branthwaite is of course a main target for Ineos as well, who also want to target young English talents. So Branthwaite really fits that bill, and he's been an absolute titan for Everton this season. Again, at such a young age, and banging in some really important goals for them too. So yeah, they're going on here talking about Varane and Casemiro maybe being shown the door, and unbelievably Real Madrid interested in both of them. Now, I don't know how true that is. I could certainly see them maybe going for Varane as backup. They've had awful luck with injuries in the defensive department, so maybe a move in January could make sense. He would be cup tied for the Champions League. I assume he played in one of those qualifying games. I don't think he was injured for all of them, but I think he was playing. In fact, I think he made a really big mistake in one of those games. But yeah, looks like those boys could be on the move as well. But the main one there is our young man, Antonio Silva, the €100 million player who's not going to go for €100 million. But United hot on his heels, and I reported on that months ago. We're going to see the same cycle of defenders coming through the news. There's about 7 or 8, and the major publications are just going to keep recycling them until the summer happens. But yeah, that's what's in the news. So Arsenal more likely than United to sign Pedro Neto, who's been reasonably good. 2 goals and 9 assists for Wolves this season. He's been very, very important for their goal scoring. And Wolves have been a revelation this season, despite Lopetegui leaving and hemorrhaging players. And I thought it was an absolute disaster. they've done really, really well. And I'm happy for them. I forget the name of the manager. Is it Paul Jones? Paul Smith? Can't remember, but he did very well at Bournemouth before he was let go, and he kept them up, and he's a fantastic young British manager. So kudos to him. So he's expected to be targeted by several Premier League clubs in the summer, and it was recently indicated that Ashworth could make Man United join the race to sign Neto. I've no doubt they will make contact. He does play in an area where United do need reinforcements. Jacobs has warned Arsenal and other interested clubs that Wolves will be looking for a club record sale, and he goes on to say, Ben Jacobs from Give Me Sport, I think that Arsenal and Spurs are more likely destinations for Neto at this point. We know Tottenham's interest is historical, and I would expect Arsenal to consider Neto as well as one of a few targets in that position. But both of the North London clubs will also be well aware that Wolves, because he is well contracted, will be looking for a club record sale. That's pretty much it. Pedro Netto, majorly on the radar for most clubs. Would I go for Pedro Neto? No, I'd want to see him around for another 1 or 2 years and see what he does. Matoma was the big noise, and he's kind of gone quiet in the last few games, and players go through patches, but for 70 million I would want to see a lot more than 2 goals and 9 assists. I'd want to be seeing a lot more goals in that as well. It's a death, like at 70 million, that's a huge gamble. You'd take a punt at 30-40 million, but 70 would be too rich for my blood. That's it. Pedro Neto looks like he could be going to Arsenal, but United in the race. So just a little injury boost ahead of the Nottingham Forest game later on this evening. 2 players are back, so it's not complete doom and gloom. However, are those players performing particularly well at the moment? Not really. Casemiro hasn't been doing especially well. Victor Lindelof trying his best, trying to fit in at left back, but he hobbled off just before full time in the 2-1 defeat to Fulham on Saturday, and Casemiro were forced off in the 52nd minute with a head injury. Those 2 back will and should make us a little bit stronger, and I'm hoping that we're going to give Forest a run for the money after the performance we put in against them at the beginning of the season. We were 2-0 down, I think, after 8 minutes. Eric Ten Hag said about Casemiro, it was a bleeding, so he had to come off. It's definitely not in our advantage that he couldn't continue the game, but he is available for tomorrow. He had suggested there'd been an overreaction to United's first defeat of the calendar year. I don't believe that. He's trying to protect his players or himself. It was an abysmal performance, and we would have been lucky to get a point out of it. And I think Ten Hag really needs to start looking at this team. But apparently he's safe. The words coming out of United and Ineos and the Hulls of Manchester are that he will be given another year. So I think they're looking forward to giving him a good, young, fit squad that he can try and mould into something. And I don't think they want to keep churning through managers. But again, you just don't know what to believe. United head to Forest in the FA Cup 5th round on Wednesday night. And when you are unbeaten for Jan and Feb and you lose one game, we know our aim is to win every game. That's United. Obviously, it was a poor performance for a defeat. We are aware of this. We want to stay in every competition. So we have to win tomorrow. It doesn't change our approach because that is for every game. Ten Hag was reluctant to dwell on his future at United. Now Sir Jim Ratcliffe and his Ineos team is overseeing football operations. He goes, I know the future, but also I have to look at today, and we have to work on the team's development and progress, and of course to win every game. That is what we are doing. A lot of effort is in today, but we also look forward to the longer term. It's important to do that. You have to. You can't just be kind of engaging in short-termism all the time because you think you're going to lose your job. But it's a dicey time for Ten Hag, and it's really going to test his mettle because, even very experienced managers like Louis van Gaal, Jose Mourinho, have crumbled under just the relentless pressure that being the United manager, just presents. Mason Greenwood, let's scroll back up to the top of this wonderful story. So Mason Greenwood, he just wants to kind of draw a line under this issue that happened with... Bellingham was caught on camera, as we know, making a reference towards Greenwood, calling him a word that I am sure Greenwood would not have appreciated given everything that's going on. And it turned into a bit of a shitstorm in the Spanish media. So apparently Greenwood's eager to avoid seeing any action taken against Bellingham. He doesn't want to be petty about it. Not that it's necessarily petty, but I think he just wants to move on and not just keep it in the orbit of his footballing career. I think he just wants to be like, yeah, cool, whatever, let's move on. I just want to play football and get on with my life. Mason has told him he doesn't want you to be punished and asked them to drop it. It's also important, despite Bellingham being some people might agree with the fact that he said it, but it's a bit nasty. I know in the heat of competition, you want to try and rile up the opposition, and people say all sorts of ungodly shit to each other on a football pitch, and especially fans towards footballers. But that was a pretty heavy thing to say, particularly to a fellow Englishman playing abroad, and someone that you might be sharing an England dressing room with at some stage as well. But listen, it's within his right to say that, and maybe some people agree and think, well, listen, if you don't want to be receiving those kind of comments, maybe you shouldn't have done what you were alleged to have done. It's a tough one. But anyway, Mason Greenwood wants to move on, and I think he's dead right. He doesn't want bad publicity and wants to get on with playing football. He was very upset at the time, and he didn't expect it from someone like Jude, but he knows that he's always likely to be a target for that kind of stuff. So he's accepted he'll need a thick skin. So yeah, that's it. Greenwood just wants to draw a line under this and move on, and I, for one, think he is absolutely correct. Both very talented footballers, and let's just get on with playing football, lads. And let's sticks and stones and all that. So apparently Ineos are very keen on Zinedine Zidane to contrast what I said earlier, that Erik ten Hag is safe, but again, anything can happen between now and the end of the season, and and I've said this a million times, even when you've got a manager who is successful and in place, every club will have 2 or 3 potential candidates sounded out to replace that person should something happen. They could get ill, they could get sick, they could get in a car crash, they could get in, all sorts of bother where they can't continue their job, and you need to have contingency. You can't just start trying to make decisions in the moment. So I'm sure Zidane is certainly on the radar. Hasn't managed since 2001, taking a bit of a break after he came in and just dominated with Real Madrid. Did very, very well for himself, in fairness. So apparently Sir Jim Ratcliffe dreams of appointing the Frenchman, and he wants Zidane to come in. He's been out of management since 2001. So it says here, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, his dream is to make Zinedine Zidane United's next manager. Ratcliffe and his Ineos team have already appointed Barada. Erik ten Hag is currently in the managerial hot seat and might be ejected out of that hot seat if things keep going the way they are going against Fulham, at least. Zidane is the British billionaire's ideal replacement for Ten Hag, and the club would be keen to bring in the Frenchman, according to Foot Mercato. So they're the two lads there. And Ratcliffe could opt for a new manager to overhaul the United squad. I mean, we already covered this in previous episodes. At least 10 to 11 players are going to be sold. This is a mixture of youth players, but significant youth players, like, players like Pellistri, Brandon Williams, people who have played a number of first team games, not like, Isaac Hansen Aaron, who was a great talent, but just was sold, Jimmy Garner, these kind of guys that never really got a chance. There's going to be a huge amount of players sold. The main issue for United is that Zidane has rebuffed attempts from other clubs since departing Madrid following his second managerial stint at the club 3 years ago. I wouldn't be surprised if he's just waiting for a crack at the French job, and a hugely talented squad, and I'm sure he could get a tune out of them after Deschamps and lead them to a World Cup, just to kind of add to the magnificence that is his football player and football management career. It's ridiculous. So Madrid remain the only team Zidane has managed since retiring from his legendary playing career, and he could be a decent option. Again, he doesn't speak English. I don't think he has any desire to learn English and come to the Premier League. Maybe that can change. Maybe that's what he's been doing since 2001, taking English lessons for the last 3 years. Who knows? Let's speculate. It's fun. But yeah, Zidane, I'd take him. I think it'd be great, but I would like to give Ten Hag another season. There's just something about him. I believe there is something there. My confidence has been shaken. I'm not an idiot, but Erik ten Hag has ability that I don't think this squad allows him to show. I think it's a very poor squad. It's poisonous. I think he way overachieved last season, and I think he needs to clear out a lot of bullshit, bring in players that match his philosophy, and I think he deserves that, given what he was able to do last year with such a threadbare squad. And on that note, Erik ten Hag hits back at Jamie Carragher's analysis of Man United on Monday Night Football. Now, to be honest, Carragher's analysis I thought was quite fair. You just have to believe your eyes. Look at the screen. And he made some points, and for those of you who haven't seen it, Jamie Carragher, he basically said that United are trying to defend in a low block but press with a high line, which leaves a gaping hole in midfield, which it does. And United have been run through in midfield countless times. Now, is it because the tactics are wrong? Are the tactics correct, but we just don't have the personnel performing them properly? If you don't have the personnel performing them properly, you need to change the tactics to better suit the personnel. So then that's back at Ten Hag. So you can keep playing tennis. It's the players, it's the manager, maybe it's both. But I thought Jamie Carragher's analysis was pretty spot on. He goes, how often do you see United players having lost the ball, having to sprint back to help out the defence from 20 yards up the pitch? And it is true. And you get, there was a great bit of video of Kobbie Mainoo, who was in the middle of the park, and he was 15 yards from a player towards the opposition goal and towards his own goal. And he couldn't make his mind up which player he wanted to go to. And he ends up occupying space. When we didn't have the ball, by the way, it's not like he's trying to find space, and just doesn't know which player to go after, which player to cover. Do I go forward? Do I go back? And it just kind of looked all a bit clueless. And this is the type of stuff that's mounting up against Ten Hag, where, you don't know what you're doing, and these are not tactics. Your players don't know what to do. They've clearly been given no instruction. What are you doing? Now, of course, this is coming from armchair fans who know absolutely the square root of fuck all compared to a professional football manager like Erik Ten Hag. But you do have to believe the evidence of your eyes sometimes and think, oh, bro, what is going on? Erik Ten Hag has been asked about this and decided to follow up with his own comments. So he's hit back at Jamie Carragher's subjective analysis of Manchester United, with Carragher highlighting why recent results have masked problems with Ten Hag's system, and he believes he's lucky to have gotten the amount of points he has this season. But Ten Hag fired back, saying some analysts are objective in their comments and offer very good advice. Some are very subjective. Jamie Carragher is one of them. For the first moment, he is criticising, and now he wants to make his point. In the first half an hour versus Fulham, he had a point. Fulham surprised with their midfield setup, and we had to find a solution. We did after half an hour. Did you though, Eric? Like, we got spanked for most of the game, got a nice goal to level it up, and then, it was 2-1 before the final whistle. Through some pretty shabby defending and from defenders and midfield. I wasn't pleased with the defensive performance, especially down the left side, and that has everything to do with willingness, spirit and passion. That was good in previous weeks, therefore we won football games. Footballers are not robots. Sometimes they have bad days. It was unacceptable, and we have to do better tomorrow. He goes on to say, we were unbeaten in January and February and we lost one game. It was a poor performance and defeat. We are aware. We want to stay in every competition. We have to win tomorrow. It doesn't change our approach. That is for every game. And we said this in a previous article when he says, I know the future. But yeah, a big game tomorrow. I think I said it was a Premier League game. No, it's an FA Cup. This is obviously the FA Cup week. And it'll be very interesting to see how that team lines up, and if there's a response off the back of the Fulham game. Is the FA Cup a competition that we want to stay in? I mean, obviously you don't want to lose just based on the fact that we've been on a losing streak. You don't want to add more pressure onto the team with another loss. But to be honest, I love the FA Cup. But given where United are, sometimes you got to cut a piece of yourself off in order to survive. And cutting that FA Cup out of the kind of horizon for United, I don't think is the worst idea. We've seen from Louis van Gaal that an FA Cup does not save your job. So Erik Ten Hag knows an FA Cup ain't going to be good enough. So, with the amount of injuries and issues that are going on, it's just another round of games and potential injuries and knackering out players towards the end of the season when you need to be winning every Premier League game you can. So yeah, I'll be looking forward to it. I hope United win, but if they don't, I'm not going to be overly fussed. I would be more than happy for United just to have the Premier League to concentrate on and try and get into the top four. But that is all for the news today. So that is it for today. Thank you very, very much for joining me. What are your thoughts? Put the thoughts in the comments. Are we happy to see Omari Forson getting more game time? Do we want to keep him? Do we want to sell him? I mean, I think it's quite clear that we need to keep him and give him more game time, particularly everything that's going on with Anthony. I think we should just bin Anthony until the end of the season and just give Omari Forson as much playing time as possible. Encourage the young lad and let him know that he definitely has a future within the first team, and to hopefully eventually give the kid a locker and show that he's got a place amongst the big boys. Mason Greenwood, looking like he just wants to get on with his football, which is very, very much understandable. And United continuing their pursuit for every centre-back in Europe with their efforts to try and get Antonio Silva, of course, João Neves a target as well at Benfica. United are going to be very, very busy with their backline, I think, this summer, with Lindelof certainly going, Varane looking like he's gone, and Maguire and co. Johnny Evans probably going to be gone as well. But Martinez's injury record, Luke Shaw's injury record, and Wan-Bissaka's injuries, and looking excess maybe for what we need, and then Tyrell Malacia in the mix, there is no reason why we would not be buying at least 3 or 4 defenders to replace a number of them, both to start and to be reliable backup as well if and when we need it. As always, thank you very, very much for joining me. Hit that like button, hit subscribe, hit the notification, and I will see you on the next one. Enjoy the match, and I'll catch you later.